So, welcome. Only a few of us, but it doesn't matter, at least a few of us. So, let's listen to the commentary on verse 19 today by Jetsunma herself. And verse 19 is the supreme method is to be natural. Now, whenever we talk about being natural, then we are actually confused. What is natural? What do you mean by being natural? Because naturally we are full of, our patterns are ruling us, our tendencies are ruling us. So what does it mean by being natural, and in what regard this is being said that the supreme method is being natural? So let us hear the commentary and maybe it will become more clear, and then we can take up a few reflections.
Things to be. So this is a very important point because it means that everything that happens to us, we use it as the path. Nothing needs to be discarded.
So this is just a ending commentary from the last, where she was sharing that all the challenges, all the difficulties, they can be taken on the path. They have to be taken on the path. Everything provides some learning. So it's just the fag end of that last verse.
Guarded. Everything, from everything we can learn. I mean, I think one of our problems is that nowadays, especially, the idea is that a good life is a life which is full of comfort. And as many problems as we can avoid and just keep everything going nice and smoothly, that's a good life. But you know, to my mind, if all we want is to be comfortable, well fed, looked after and loved, we should pray to come back as a pet dog. I mean, look at Mumu. You know, she's loved, she's fed, she doesn't have to work, she has no problems. I mean, if that's all we want from life, but is that what we're here for? Aren't we here to learn, to develop, to transform? In which case, we have to take everything onto the path and use it. Nothing is discarded. One Lama said to me one time, very traditional Lama, I was complaining about this and that and the other. And he said to me, if you say obstacle, it's an obstacle. If you say opportunity, it's an opportunity. And this is true. There is nothing which happens to us that we cannot learn from. The supreme method is to be natural. And again, I will take this to mean that exactly what it says, that we shouldn't try to be something we're not. That you are not all going to transform yourselves into, unless you are Indian, you're not going to try to transform yourself into Indians. We are not trying to transform ourselves into something which we are not. We're trying to express our true nature and not pretend to be something we're not. Certainly, within my own spiritual tradition, it is, as with a yogic tradition, sometimes it's difficult to discriminate what is culture and what is actually the spiritual path. And to a certain extent, we can absorb the culture too. But nonetheless, we have to recognize that the culture is just a culture. It's not the path. This becomes very clear in Buddhism, where it went to many different countries after India and absorbed the culture of those countries. So you have Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, and so forth. And so there you can see very clearly how the essential Dharma truth took on the flavoring and the coloring of the culture which it went to. Buddhism is very absorbent like that. It was very happily absorbed into anything and at the same time maintain its integrity. So it's very important to, when I first met my Lama, he said to me, always recognize that Tibetan Buddhism is half culture, half Buddhism. So you can throw out.
So I'm just going to, because this is a very elaborate explanation, and for our matter, that matters to us is uh, when she says that the supreme method is to be natural. I think in some other way that we can talk about it in general is that, say, coming from Sri Aurobindo's and Mother, we see that they say that each person has their own swabhava, their natural inclinations. So when she was sharing that, for example, when we talk about Buddhism, it takes up different flavors. In India, it is something different. It takes in Tibet, it is something different. So that can happen. For example, if an Indian goes to US or Europe or some other country, he will get a bit colored by that culture. But even then, apart from that color, we see that we have some natural inclinations. Now, Mother and Sri Aurobindo say that that's what our swabhava is, and we have to actually recognize that swabhava, because otherwise we cannot ever know who I truly am. What are my likes, what are my preferences? Oh, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So in the beginning, this like and dislike is very important to recognize, because, for example, there are two kids in the house. I would take example of my own house, and one of them naturally, a sense of reading, wanting to be with books comes, but to the other person it doesn't come naturally, and for that person something else is more natural. So if I push the other one into, you must also put your head in the books all the time, then it's going to be a big trouble for him, because he is not naturally bent towards it. Of course, some bit of reading everybody will have to do for basic understanding, and that will be done, but natural inclinations are very important to recognize. So in that sense, we have to take this, that how can I make use of this verse number 19, the supreme method is to be natural. So not to, because many a times, for example, when we get married or when we are in families, then many a times we are doing things because everybody is doing, that, or maybe the elders are asking you to go, so you also go, although you have no real, maybe you feel a total discomfort in being there wherever they are taking you. Even then you keep on doing that. So that's a kind of a self torture, although that torture also does, I feel, give us some experience which helps us in the process. But slowly we have to be really sensitive to our tastes, likes, preferences, and that is what our natural swabhava is. And if we don't recognize it, then always something will be missing from our life, and we can't be truly ourselves, we can't be naturally ourselves. So not to suffocate, strangulate ourselves in the name of society or people living around, because each person is very unique, each person is very, very different, no matter how common we are as human beings, yet we are very unique in our potentialities. So one has to dig them out, and one has to then refuse to be anybody else, actually, for a long time, to get stabilized in that swabhava. And later on, even that has to be surrendered at the feet of the divine. But that comes later for us. First, we have to completely own ourselves. Without owning ourselves, without nurturing, fostering ourselves, what are we going to surrender to the divine? We can't surrender a kind of a sloppy mass of jelly which we don't even know who we are. So in that sense, one would take it. And I cut that short for now, because I thought that maybe it distracts us, and uh, doesn't serve us the purpose. So that beginning part I cut short, but we can go back to it again. So anything here anyone wants to share?
Hi. So the speaker in this video, Jetsunma, right? So she said two things. She said that if we live in the comfort, I mean, comfort is should not be there in the life. One should see any kind of obstacle in the path as an opportunity to rise above. And the second thing she talks about is the naturalness, the natural state. So I think these two are very deeply connected because once the person is in comfort, then he is not exposed to the real life obstacles, and then he will never be able to find out that what his interests or likings are and what his dislikings are. Once he is exposed to the real life challenges, then comes to know that what his natural inclination is. So yeah, I think that these two are deeply connected. Thank you.
Yes. So let's go back to this again, and we can take up more reflections by and by.
Of being mothers and fathers, being daughters and sons and family and friends and whatever. I mean, endlessly we're playing roles. That's fine, as long as we recognize they're just roles. Some of these roles are very useful, some of them are. The problem is when we identify with the roles and we think that's who we really are. And so it's no good putting on, the word personality comes from the word persona, which was the mask which was used in Greek and Roman plays. They didn't show the face of the actors, they wore masks to portray the role they were playing. So our persona is the mask we're wearing to depict the role we are playing, which is fine as long as we don't identify with that. We recognize it's just a persona. It's just a mask. And in this way, we remain, therefore, true to ourselves. We remain natural. We don't try to pretend to be something that we're not. Especially in spiritual circles, this is important. Because, we all know we have to be kind. We all know we have to be loving. We all know we have to be peaceful. We all know, and on and on and on. And so we try to be that. I think especially people living in ashrams. We try to impersonate the person we think we should be. But sometimes if we are not honest about that, then that sets up a lot of inattention because we're suppressing the feelings we really have because we know that's not acceptable. And then later on, that can create a lot of stress and depression.
Yeah, so again, I think good point to maybe take a break, because again, what was being said was very, very relevant. I feel that after reading, many a times it happens that we are reading a lot of books and maybe attending many, many things. And somehow by default, it happens that you begin to think that, oh, I have all these realizations that I am reading about. Because she was specially talking about spiritual path and spiritual circles. So, for example, one reads about being egoless and being the witness self, and when begins to think that, oh, I am there. And when one gets into trouble, because the troubles keep on coming, then one cannot share it with anyone, because you have put up that kind of a persona in front of everyone that You are there. So this is a very, very big trouble, and I feel that especially for those of us who are on the path consciously, uh, this becomes even a greater trouble, because I have been in touch with people that, because since only because many people know them as being connected with Mother Sri Aurobindo, or maybe a seeker on the path for 20 years, 30 years, when they are going through problems they can't share with anyone, because they don't want to show that I have, or like, you first create a persona, and as she was sharing, and then you have to put up to it, you have to put up to that mask. So that's very, very dangerous, and also very difficult for the person who is going through, because after all, we are all imperfect beings striving towards perfection, and nobody is perfect, no matter how big a guru or a seeker one could be. So this really creates a lot of problems, and we then don't even seek help, because when we are going through some issues and we are not able to sort it out ourselves, we all need each other. And many a times it happens that we are not even able to reach out because of this, because the image that one has created or one is trying to maintain in front of people is that, I'm there, or whatever is there, nobody knows, or I have reached. Where to reach again, nobody knows. So very, very, to be very cautious of this, and to be again and again, get grounded by all the experiences of life, and know that, we are all very, very extremely simple ordinary beings, although each one is special, but everyone is extremely, extremely ordinary, to keep us grounded. And and also this stigma associated with reaching out for help, I think, especially in people who have been on the spiritual path for longer times, they think that, oh, I have been, on this path for many, many years, how can I ask for help? Why? Because the stigma associated is that one who is uh, seeking help is somebody inferior, and the one who is giving help is somebody maybe superior. I don't know how we make these categorizations, but we do make. The limited mind keeps on making these categorizations. So we get into a big trouble there. So good to be grounded, and good to know that we are not there, and we are all holding each other's hands in this journey, and all in the same boat. Um, yeah. So hypocrisy would be a very big difficulty on the path, when we are not natural, when we are maybe struggling with something, but uh, on the top, everything is good, and not even able to reach out for help. I think that really puts us in a big, big trouble. So being natural means very simple hearted, light hearted. And when you know you are in trouble, then you know you are in trouble. Very simple. That's being natural, at ease. So you're no need to hide, no need to manipulate and show something else. And also this idea of getting attached to our roles, which she was sharing, that if I am most of the times I am a mother, and if I get too attached to this role of being the mother, then it really suffocates us, it really constricts us. So again and again one has to step back, that I am something beyond these roles. I may play these roles, but the roles don't define me. They I'm something much, much bigger and beyond all these gigs that I keep playing. Even the gigs of being a spiritual seeker, that's a gig only, but we are something beyond that. So good to get grounded again and again in that ease, that simplicity and ease, where one has nothing to hide and nothing to really protect. Somebody was sharing that falsehood needs a lot of supports, but truth doesn't need any support, because if you speak something, now you have to put up to it, you have to again and again show that, oh, you are that image. So for that you need so much of manipulation that has to happen, and all the time that mind is going into draining into that creation of the image and sustenance of that image. But when you don't bother about the images, and you are just truly yourself, then no need to drain energy into putting up supports for the falsehood. Like a chair has supports, one has to sustain the seating area of the chair. So falsehood needs a lot of supports, but truth would not need any support. So when we are simple, when we are easy, transparent, then our energies, mental energies are not going into any manipulative aspect. That's also one aspect of being natural. Anything anyone wants to add on here?
This is so beautiful, Monica. Like, yeah, wonderful. Because I think personally also I've experienced this, like in last few days, uh, having certain being in a phase where there are problems, and also sharing it with my colleagues and all, and somewhere, yeah, that that fear of being judged, because you do have an image where this can't happen with you, and yet going out all open and sharing it, because yeah, it did drain me initially, but that need to just go bare was always there. And yeah, so it helps to feel like nobody, and like it's really nice when you don't have to put on an image where people might judge you. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's very liberating actually, not to have any image, being a nobody, completely okay with that, and being very simple, what you shared, yes.
Yeah, truly.
Being a nobody is liberating, no need to
Absolutely.
put up with any image.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, yeah, like see, the obstacle becomes an opportunity, right? So it is so much growth. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, Taru, you wanted to add on?
Yeah, hi. I joined late, so I'm sorry if something would have already been covered. This natural, I think, it should not be firstly confused with nature, because then again, it's just patterns and how you are lived. And I think being natural requires a lot of honesty, right? Like, because we don't even know that we are stuck to something, right? Like you were sharing that how if somebody has walked a little bit on this path, he would feel one should not seek for help. And I've also seen that when we hear something, it feels we already know it. And then one starts pretending to be that. And then there are images around, say how, like, what we were just discussing before the last video, before the last clip, that there are images around everything. And without, in the sense, as if it's like I have my own individuality, and yet the whole society is kind of bent on making all of us same, right? It has well-defined milestones. And the first time it struck me was like, say, when I was walking on the that in New York, that Wall Street, how each and every business analyst from India had almost the same suit on, the same style of gel in his hair, almost the same, even height. I don't know, I'm sorry, but it was like that. I've already crossed such a person. I've already crossed such a person. And then they were like, they're all the same. And the weirdest thing is that we take delight in that. Rather, it should be offensive, right? That why is everybody looking the same? Why would I feel that I've crossed 10 people just like him? And yet, it makes us feel smart, right? We see somebody, we want to be like them, especially in the superficial. So, this conflict between what I can be or feel natural being and what is shown as smartness or cleverness, image of how a master should be, right? Okay, he should be mostly wearing white. Image of how, and without knowing, I mean, if we are not conscious fully, these just come in, right? Because they are so strongly there in our brain that, okay, this has to be like this. A mother has to be. full of mamta, like you were saying, right? I remember once Acharya Prashant had shared that how so many of us would love to name our daughters Mamta. And he said, I haven't met a single Samta in my life, and how Samta is so far beyond. I'm sorry, it sounds like a rhyme, Mamta. But if you look at the essence, right? Mamta is pretty kind of, it's so sad that मैं and Mera and the world is applauding me for that. Yes, yes, Ma, ki Mamta kinds. So questioning that, right? That okay, I think this is sacred. Is it? To lose my mind over this. How is this sacred? So yeah, so I think the element of truth and honesty to oneself. Because more than anything, we make ourselves the most kind of, we hide from our own self the most. So I think that's really good. So yeah, even I was saying this thing came very strongly to me that when I listen something, I feel I'm already that, and that takes away the practice aspect, the practical aspect, which can actually make a difference in my life. I was actually talking to somebody and he said that, I don't want this kind of a seeking. I want the seeking that, I heard that, that person just was born with that faith and stuff and stuff and stuff. That's what I want. So, and he was like, just because I know it, I am already on the way. And I was like, then why are we even having this discussion about, fear and I don't know where my life is going? Because if you're already there, then this conversation doesn't. So it's like how we fool ourselves, all of us, is very good to know so that we can now maybe see that I am fooling myself and maybe it's time to stop. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is so blinding. Blinding is the word that you don't even, talking about it, and one doesn't get to, and that is why the importance of a community who is actually, when we talk about taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So to have those friends around who will actually tell you when you are blinded, because usually we run away from those friends. We would actually stick to those friends mostly who are partnering in our blindness, who are saying वाह वाह हाँ तेरा actually में हो गया, something like that. But to have a friend and to be so open in nature that, and that's why these psychic bonds, when Mother and Sri Aurobindo talk about, to have such kind of relationships, even if you want to have relationships where both of you are open to each other, and if one points out the mistake, the other listens, the other points out the mistake, the other one listens, so because both are wanting benefit of each other, and we know that being blinded is beneficial to none. So when one sees one's blindness, to be able to talk to somebody and to actually ask that, do you see that I am blinded? Do you see that there is something that I am missing because I can't see something, maybe. So I think this is what we, Sri Aurobindo calls at sattvicity, the sattvic character, what a Aryan needs to have, because every moment you have to put the right effort. So how would I put the right effort if I know that I have reached? That is blinding. But in Sattvicity, you become porous and receptive to your own blindness. So that's, the way forward. That all the energy now is wanting to focus upon, okay, let me see where am I blinded? Let me see where am I blinded? Knowing that, yes, I have not reached. So that, as you said, requires a lot of honesty to oneself. And that's why all these qualities that Mother talks about, being vigilant, sincere, all these qualities then become alive for us. That, yeah, now it's making sense. Why would Mother say that I have to be sincere? Because when I am not sincere, then I'm fooling myself. When I'm not vigilant, what you shared, that these images just keep on forming in the background. So वहां पे हमको कोई effort नहीं करना. In formation of these images that I have reached and all these, that is effortless. That is ego patterns running. but the effort is to be put in order to keep these mental constructions in check. भाई ये कहाँ से आ गई, अच्छा ये कहाँ से, ये कहाँ से. So like a guard, as Kabir says, sitting on the mental periphery, looking at each image that is entering, and the moment it is looked, it is deconstructed actually. That's the beauty, like in these movies, ये जो Harry Potter और इस type की movies में, you see that the moment light is there, all these little slimy creepy creatures, they run away. So they can only exist in this darkness, all these images that keep on forming by default, unconsciously. So yes, absolutely, this honesty, the courage which Shweta was talking about, the courage to be bare open. And there is nothing to protect, and that is so liberating, that you are not protecting any image of yourself. How liberating is that? And not even protecting this image that, oh, I am nobody, because that can also become an image. हमारा कुछ अता पता तो है नहीं, हम हर जगह इमेज ही फॉर्म करते रहते हैं. सो अब इसकी इमेज बना लेंगे, सी आई एम नोबडी, वो भी इमेज बन सकती है. सो एक्सट्रीमली कॉशियस. And what you just pointed very briefly, but I think it was very important, this, that when we talk about being natural, it seems to us that now in the state of ignorance that we are mostly, being natural is being overrun by our vrittis and patterns and the patterns that run us. But here we have to realize that being natural in this respect that we are talking is, they're actually talking about being our true psychic individuality, which has to be put a lot of effort in order to dig out. True psychic individuality, which makes each one of us very, very special and unique. Pure, unique, special, combination of permutation of, these special abilities, talents in this area, that area, and offering then later on, when we find it, and then later on offering it to the service of the divine, or the universe. That how can I now, with this personality, how can I benefit others? First, I have to find it out. First, I have to find it. And that requires a lot of honesty and effort, courage, effort, honesty. And also a willingness to find out that what you were sharing, that if I don't want to be just like all these people walking, all looking alike, then one questions, who am I? What am I really? What is my uniqueness? So then a mother shares that it takes a lot of scientific effort actually in order to observe yourself very closely, to see what comes naturally to you, to see where you can give yourself, offer yourself without even thinking, in what field. And for each one of us, it's very, very special, very unique. For example, just talking about myself, holding these sessions is effortless for me. It comes very naturally. So it's never a bother, even if there are 3 sessions a day. Never a bother. Why? Because it is a joy, it's a delight. So like that, now for somebody else, holding a session would be a pain in the ass maybe, because we are not alike, we are different, unique. But for somebody else, maybe working with children and being with children for maybe 5 hours, more hours, maybe a delight, which someone like, I also like to be with children, so I can't call someone like me, but maybe other people can't resonate with कि ये कैसे कर सकते हैं, how is that possible, 5 hours with kids. So these are the things which we have to figure out, what are so special in us, and then we have to foster and nurture them, mother says, slowly, not getting stuck there. Slowly we have to actually expand also in other horizons which were not naturally there with us. So if math was something which was my weaker point, I start with biology, I nurture and foster biology. Slowly if the work requires, I also nurture mathematics. Near to far. That's the process of self-discovery as shared by mother. And we see it all requires so much of effort. Then we become natural. Then we have, so as you were sharing, that it requires a lot of effort first in order to be effortless. First, a lot of effort. Okay, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. Okay, I'm this, then fostering this, nurturing this, and lot of neti also required, lot of cultivation also required. Not an easy cup of tea for most of us. And for those of us who are pretty natural from the very beginning, we will see that the thing that we are not able to see is that they have done their sadhana in the previous lives. So nobody is born like that. People who are born like that, they have done their share of effort, and they still have to do a lot of effort. So not to keep comparing also with one another, because that really puts us in a lot of pressure and unnecessary turmoil. So this comparison with others, I think this really, if it's an inspiration from others, then definitely can be a part of life, getting inspired from others. But if it's comparison, getting jealous, and who is better and I am better, or that one is superior, I am inferior, I think that really is very uneasy place where we should not go. Not really a nice place to go. And also these musicians that we see, that before they are playing effortlessly on stage, hours and hours and hours of practice they put. So as they share that being effortless requires a lot of effort. Yes, Taru?
Yeah, just was fearing the same thing, that somehow I want to run away from effort, right? I want to go towards what's comfortable. And lot of times things that look effortless, they do take a lot of effort, which I don't see. And I feel that, oh, that naturally comes to them. But I would say, just throwing a figure out there, 9 out of 10 times, that seemingly effortless personality or happening did have a lot of effort that I couldn't see. So, and I think that, oh, I have to put effort, while for everybody else, it seems to be flowing just, like grace. And so just being mindful that nothing, like they say, there's no free lunch, right? So there's no free victory, there's no free transformation, there's no free rejection. Effort needs to be done, and it's a very, I mean, I don't know, it scares us, right? Effort somehow scares us, and yet we know that it is needed. Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else? Anything to add on here? Okay. So let's hear a bit more. It would be nice to hear again, and then we can see what to do.
Because we're not being true to ourselves and our level of development at this time. It doesn't mean that if somebody annoys us, we can just be angry. I mean, but we have to recognize that we feel angry, even if we don't respond with anger, because anger is not skillful, and so we try to be patient. That's fine, that's good, that's part of the practice. But if we deny to ourselves that we actually are very irritated, then we're in trouble. At least we should be honest with ourselves. Do you understand what I'm saying? Of course we are trying to improve, but we have to be honest. Otherwise we end up just playing a part. It's not real.
So today, somebody I was talking to So the discussion was that does it help to listen to all these teachings and motivational quotes and all that? I mean, it feels like it doesn't make any difference. And although we are listening to it and yet see, we are the same, something like that. So the question was that does it help to listen or go through motivational quotes, or maybe it doesn't make any difference? Before I share what I shared in that discussion, would anyone want to share on what you think about it? That, say, for example, we are hearing these teachings, and does it really help? Or Mother Sri Aurobindo's quotes that keep on coming on WhatsApp groups, and all the beautiful words. Of course, they are beautiful words, full of light, full of truth. But does it make any difference? Do you think it's helpful? So, any thoughts there?
Most definitely, no? Very, very helpful. Like continuous pouring of all that, that you do on WhatsApp. It it helps me a lot. I'm not able to catch up on everything because of the day's routine and all. But whenever I get a chance, I read, and it has accelerated my journey and my thinking process. Definitely, it's always there. In fact, it feels so good that something or the other is just there every morning to read and as a guidance, as a support. Helps.
Yeah. So what I was sharing with in this discussion, what came to me when this question was asked, that going through motivational quotes and these words, does it help? And I said that to me they help the most when I am going through a big trouble. So when I am going through a trouble, then these words really become alive for me. But when there are days when there is not much reflection, things are okay, not much trouble is there, I think there the depth one cannot reach, that depth which one reaches in one's problematic times, when the times are challenging. So I feel that something in us maybe becomes more porous, and there is no end to becoming more porous. So I feel that something in us really really opens up. I don't know why it would close again, but it does. um, when we are, especially when we are going through a challenge, and if some quote or something, a word from Mother Sri Aurobindo or some teaching like this appears in front when I'm going through a challenge, then it really 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 like helps to what you were sharing, push me forward and make this propulsion ahead. But otherwise I would agree that there are many times also when you are, although going through and maybe taking delight in these motivational stuff, so called motivational stuff, but actually nothing really is so called actively happening. Maybe of course, as you were sharing, at one drop by drop, things change, but actively it doesn't seem like things are changing. But in problematic times, in challenging times where one is feeling helpless and one doesn't know where to find solace, then the depths that we reach, they are unsurpassable. They are not found in the usual hunky dory lives. I have not seen them for myself. That's what I can say. Somehow, maybe dog's tail. Better to put a rock of pain over the dog's tail so that it keeps straight. That's what I feel. That the intensities we reach in our problematic and challenging times, we can't somehow reach them in at the moment, in the day to day okay life. So who would want then okay life? That's why maybe Rahim would say, give me pain and give me misery so that I always remember you. Because the receptivity that we see, the porosity, the groundedness, the humility that is there when we are completely nailed, that's not to be found in our usual ordinary life. I have not seen that for myself. Yeah. And also to the motivation to listen to others, the motivation to work upon ourselves. I think this intensifies specifically in periods of difficulties. That's why they can be very, very good opportunities for progress. So not to run away from them, but to embrace, not to even ask for them. Mother says that you should not ask for suffering, but you should not run away from suffering either. And know that when suffering is there, you can actually go through that veil and something brighter and bigger opens up in front. So to make use of suffering. Yeah, and this thing what Jetsunma just was sharing regarding if we are angry and we are not even able to express that I am angry, or even acknowledge to ourselves that, oh, right now I am not in an okay state, I need some time maybe. So when we just suppress all these emotions, so-called negative, disturbing emotions, saying that I should not be having these, I think then the trouble really becomes very, very heavy. So just to validate its presence, that yes, it is there, and I know that I don't want to follow the dictate of ambition, greed, lust, desire, whatever, but I see that yes, it's there. So that really brings us back on ground, that okay, like there is a child who is crying and you are acknowledging the child, okay, I see you crying. It's not that I'm ignoring you or I don't want to see you crying, go behind the curtain. So, but not to also follow the dictates of crime, because there we again another torture starts. So to know that the ripple of anger is there, but also to acknowledge it, that yeah, it's there, I see the darkness, but I would want not to follow the darkness. So that grounding, that humility, if that is there, I think that can be very, very progressive. Yeah, anyone wants to add on?
Yes, so especially with anger, sometimes I do wonder because personally, uh, I have not been able to relate to anger. I don't know why, but it would come as some other expression, but like not anger or the aggression wala anger. Now, when in my class I see children, these little children, few of them are extremely angry, extremely angry. So, uh, even in my house with my own child, like I feel since childhood that outlet for anger was not there because they couldn't see a person who was angry ever. So they just felt, like it's wrong to be angry. And somewhere anger was like अगर हो रहा है तो ये कुछ गड़बड़ है, like like ऐसा, which I realize now as they've grown up, because uh, anger somehow I didn't acknowledge it only as a valid emotion. It was never there for me, and being that role model even for my children, it was difficult, like to not अंदर से गुस्सा आ रहा है but नहीं ये तो गलत है. That's how they grew up by themselves, जो मुझे बाद में पता चला. Like in school, when I see children, like so angry, so normally, like what we say, कि when we are sharing about these, like moments, so हम बच्चों को ही पूछते हैं, then we say, okay, I count till 10, and then I feel better. Then some child will say, oh, I drink water, I sip water, and after that I feel better, or I breathe. And one child said, about Vaheguru karta हूँ मैं. So, like recently I had this discussion with this 4-year-olds. I'm talking about 4-year-olds. So आई वाज जस्ट वंडरिंग, दो मुझे भी पर्सनली लगता है कि ये ठीक है, उस वक्त वो डिस्ट्रैक्ट हो जाता है, या वी जनरली एनकरेज चिल्ड्रन टू कलर एंड पेंट, बट दिस एग्रेशन जो है ना, somehow आई फील ये आउटलेट भी थोड़ा फिजिकल होना चाहिए. मतलब व्हेन आई कम एंड डिस्कस विद माय चिल्ड्रन, वो भी मुझे बोलते हैं अभी कि नहीं मम्मा, मतलब ये सब तो ठीक है, लेकिन जब गुस्सा आ रहा है तो वो फिर या तो भागो दौड़ो या कोई पिल्लो को पंच करो, ये जरूरी है. ये सब कि आप कलरिंग कर रहे हो, पेंटिंग कर रहे हो, somehow वो एंगर निकलता नहीं. इट नीड्स अ फिजिकल एक्सप्रेशन विच इज लाइक हार्ड. तो this I'm wondering these days, like exactly छोटे बच्चों के साथ कैसा आउटलेट दो. तो we tell them to run, बहुत like बाहर फ्रंट लॉन में रन करो and now, but yeah, it's like really ये सिर्फ उससे नहीं होता है, just a discussion or distraction से, especially anger I'm talking about. I've had a very difficult relationship with anger, like.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. Yes, does shed a lot of light. And again, I think things are so complex. Looking at anger, and there's so many different ways of looking at anger, and also knowing that at the root of it, all these emotions are, although it has a valid place, if it is there, it has to be validated, recognized. Since we don't know where is the root coming from, what kind of a conditioning is giving rise to anger, what kind of a nurture is giving rise to anger, तो कहीं ना कहीं से तो वो आ रहा है. And these are all, as they say in the term that they use is, these are atavisms. These are distorted patterns which we carry. Mostly we see that many parents who are aggressive, not every parent would be aggressive, but many parents who are aggressive, they see that aggression in some or the other form in their children also. If the parent is sensitive, he would see that, this is my weakness being reflected in the child. We see that. So again, these are patterns which are running, but they can't be just cut short like that. It requires a lot of inner work. But this is one of the ways that you were sharing. I think at every stage and every context, the expression has to be different. I totally agree. And this, since anger is a lot of, like a, it's like an energy, lots of energy. So I would resonate with what you were sharing, that those of us who are, into some, that's why it's very good to channel that energy into some kind of bodily thing. I would
Right.
very much resonate with that, because then you actually, if you have seen, if you are angry someday and you go out for a run and you really tire yourself because of that run or something that you play, you would see that once you come back of that sports, you would actually not be able to be angry, because that energy
Exactly.
is now
So tired.
used
Yeah,
used up. Yes.
absolutely.
And nowadays, with our lifestyles, modern lifestyles, the child is uh, very much suffocated in these four walls. One can say suffocated only because this is not a natural way of living. These four walls is not a natural way of living. So all the time, the child has to, little child full of energy has to be inside, be inside. Why? Because outside is corona, something else. So this is a torture on the child. And where, what will he do? He would get, because it's like, brimming up and down, that energy, that prana. So where will it go? It goes into frustration, getting annoyed, and getting angry at things, because there is no outlet. And people who have more physical labor, like doing kheti or something of that sort, which requires a lot of
Exactly.
effort, there you have less chances of becoming, too aggressive, because there's hardly any energy left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this came out of like discussions with my children at home, because I share like class में जो issues आते हैं. Sometimes just sit and share and take their opinion what you will do, and then
Yeah.
my elder
And
child
also
did
all these,
suggest this, that
the tools that you were sharing
mm,
by guru or something, I think they also have a proper place, because knowing that anger is a disturbing emotion, it
mm,
brings unease. It is not true to our true nature. It's not true. That's why being angry makes us feel uneasy, because we are not our natural self when we are angry. And to at least have these little tits and bits of exercises that you were sharing, to keep it at bay, I think that also has its proper place. Not,
And also
yeah.
not judging anger. With
Mm.
me, I think what happened was I could never relate to anger. I very strongly judged anger. Maybe because I have seen, while growing up, I've seen my mother being very angry. So that was one emotion. I was like, no, this is not right, and I'll never acknowledge it. And I somehow, like, I didn't. So I think it came out as something else, sadness or something, but never anger. Anger was never something I could relate to. But it so beautifully sprouted in my children to make me realize that you're judging. Anger is an expression which needs an outlet. So very beautifully, I realized this after a long time. Yeah,
Beautiful.
full
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they say that masters have said that anger is a distorted wisdom energy.
That's
So
true.
people who have more aggression, they
Hmm.
get angry more often. It's that it can actually, now see, we have to be so nurturing and sensitive that that energy which is now getting distorted as anger, it can be actually channelized into a direction which where the intelligence of that child flowers, or an adult, because
Hmm.
it's a distorted wisdom energy, so much energy, so much vibrancy, but it's going in a sad direction. Yeah. So more anger, more capacity for wisdom. We have to look at the positive side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyone wants to add on anything? I remember when I first went to my therapist in the beginning when I was diagnosed, many years ago with cancer. So he asked me one day, that one session he started, he asked me that, okay, today we are going to do an anger session. And I said, okay. And then he said that, okay, tell me about how you deal with anger. And I told him that I don't know much about anger. I'm not an angry person usually. So I could resonate with what Shweta was sharing. And then he said, okay, then we will have the anger session. And then he asked me to beat this pillow. I think it was a pillow. For 1 hour, I had to do nothing but keep shouting, shouting, shouting at all, and maybe use abusive words from my mouth to all the things that are coming into my head, and people who I feel frustrated with, angry with, annoyed with, irritated with. And I did not know that. I thought I'll after 5 minutes I'll stop, but I could not stop. So I continued for one full hour, and still I remember that that evening after that session, I was feeling as if I was floating in the air. I didn't even know that I had so much suppressed, because at that time, all this living consciously, I didn't know about it, that looking at each thought, each feeling, of course, we all start with that darkness. That darkness is still there, but I would say that at that point of time, I did not even know what is the thought I am having in my head throughout the day. What are the feelings going on. Now at least one sees, okay, disturbing ones, not disturbing ones, so one is looking at these. But earlier the content of my being was totally, I was not there. So I was not even aware that I would have so much of anger, and I only realized it that I had so much of suppression after the session ended. And that evening I was actually feeling like almost levitating, one can say, because it just made me so light. I could not imagine that uh, there was a burden. It did not feel like there was a burden unless I did that practice and blabbered for 1 hour, and something must have happened, some all this burden and suffocated energies, they must have gotten released. No, but that is not the ending of the path, that is just showing me that I do suppress anger. But the path is that not to even build it up, The moment it gets building up, you recognize it, validate it, and immediately work on it. We don't have to be unconscious all the time. We start from there, but we don't have to carry that unconsciousness. So that was a big revelation, that on one hand I'm thinking that I'm not an angry person, and on other hand I'm just shouting and screaming, on hurling abuses on everyone for one hour. I can't remember what happened to that pillow, but I remember a lot of shouting. Yeah. Yeah, so that was to be natural. I think again, stressing and knowing that we have to put effort to be natural. There are many disturbing elements that come and take the throne, and they say that I will rule your life. But we have to be conscious of these elements coming in, and knowing that these are all collective suggestions: anger, desire, lust, greed, ambition. These are all collective suggestions. They are not true to our nature. So slowly, as we understand this, then we can notice it coming, and if we have the capacity, actually reject it completely, and to embrace the ease that we are, to embrace the simplicity that we are, not to make our lives too complicated. And it's so beautiful that nature has put up this uh, element of signal, that the moment anger is there, desire, restlessness, all these disturbing elements are there, they bring unease in the being. That is the very simplest signal that these are not true to my nature. So not to become very comfortable with that, everybody is angry, I am also angry. Of course anger has a place, and it has to be validated, recognized, not suppressed, but not to say that my life is ruled by these disturbing emotions, because there is a purpose why they are called disturbing emotions and not happy emotions, because they are not true to our nature. So if we keep on listening to their dictates, we are going to be in trouble continuously. So the last two verses I will not be taking up, which are the supreme. Just a second. I think the supreme service is maybe to enter the dharma, let people enter the dharma. Yeah, the supreme way of benefiting is to help others enter the dharma, and the supreme benefit is a mind that turns towards the dharma. So use your own, let us use our own reflections on this. And that would be the end of these verses on Lojong, the Atisha's verses on Lojong. And maybe we'll take up something new in some time on Thursdays. Maybe take a break for some time. Yeah, so anything anyone wants to add on in the last comments? Any last comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everyone.